Okay, let's see. I am now live. Okay. I do have volume. That's always a plus. All right, now where is it this? I don't know. Let's find out. Error not found. Why is it doing that? Oy vey. Bear with me, guys. It's, you know, first time doing this and I gotta figure out how to share it. Let's see. Nobody watching right now. That's a plus. Nope. That's not what I'm looking for. Why didn't that save? It's kind of weird. Maybe I don't need, maybe I just need that. Oh, you suck. Okay, let's try this. Take that part off. See if that'll work. What the hell? No, that's not me. I'm not exactly sure. Let me see here. If I go back in time, I'm thinking, whatever this is, okay. So now I just gotta figure out where the link is. Oh, and I have somebody watching. Bear with me. Bear with me. I'm working on something. All right. And I can't spell. Just nothing new. And there we go. All right, now get out of this. Okay, close that down. Hi everybody. Sorry. New to all of this, so I'm trying to figure out exactly what's going on here. If you can't hear me, let me know, because I need to know. It says I have one person watching. I have no idea who's watching, but hi! I'm a little early, but I want to get it all set up a little bit before, because I'm not used to doing live with video. So it takes me a couple of minutes to get everything situated with OBS and everything else that needs to be done. So, I'm going to give it a couple more minutes here. See if we're going to have people showing up. So they have one person watching, so we'll see. We'll see. If not, it's recorded and it will be on the radio and it will be in the archives in my Ravenwings YouTube, as well as SGR's archive for Sacred Grove Radio. I will MP3 record it, so it's just a voice, so they can play it on the radio as well. Let's see, let me double check that. Okay, bring that up a little bit. is that doing that? I'll give it a shot. I think it's picking up a lot of background noise, so. Which I really don't want it to do, but, you know, whatever. You can only do what you can do. I do have the chat window up, so if you have any questions while you're watching, you can feel free to jump into the chat room. Oh, excuse me. Ask questions, make comments, just say hi. Say I can't hear you. Say I can hear you. Say, you know, I'm here. Say something. Because I get lonely. So anyway, to make my announcement, this is Herbalism and More with Ravenwings, and I am your host, Ravenwings. Basically what this show is I had this show for a long time, a couple of years, on a radio, on a station, a radio station, internet radio station. And when I left that station, I kind of dropped everything to do with that show. This was the show that I created. This was all me. This is my show. This is my setup. So what I wanted to do was bring it back now. Took a little bit of a hiatus, I guess is the way to put it. Had to take care of some health issues. Had to take care of some issues in general that needed to be taken care of. But now that I'm back to normal, whatever you want to call that, yeah, I am back, and I wanted to bring back this show because this was my favorite show. It was my first show, and it was my favorite show. So, my first alone show. The first show I ever did was with Athena Wise, and we were doing herbs and crystals, so same radio station. But that didn't work out, and then I came back and I did my own show. I had several shows actually, but this was my favorite show. This is the one that I enjoy the most. I can get into anything and everything here, so I love that, and it makes my life easier. I've always studied herbs, so herbalism is a big part of my life. Even growing up as a kid, I grew up with a grandmother who was French, and she did a lot with herbs and home remedies and stuff like that. So herbs have been around for quite a long time for me. But as far as herbalism itself, what I wanted to do is get it broken down into some layman terms, basically, so you know what herbalism is and what it's for and yada yada yada. So it's not that I'll only be doing herbalism, but you know, this is one of my main topics because this is something I've been studying for the last 40 some odd years. So, but herbalism is the study of botany, and the use of plants for medicinal purposes or for supplementing your diet. The plants have been the basis for medical treatments for, God, most of human history. Traditional medicine is still widely practiced today, like over in the Orient and Asia, that area. Modern medicine does recognize herbalism as a form of alternative medicine. The practice of herbalism is not strictly based on evidence using the scientific methods. Modern medicine does make use of many plants, however, derived compounds, and are the basis for evidence based on pharmaceutical drugs. There is a scope of herbal medicine that extends into fungal, which is your mushrooms and stuff like that, and bee products, honey, pollen, stuff like that, as well as minerals, shells, and even certain animal parts. So herbalism is a very widespread form to go into. Most of your old-time witches would have been considered herbalists because they were the midwives, the doctors, the how do I put this? They were the go-to person if you were sick, or you were going to have a baby, or if you had a curse on you, or whatever the case may be. These were the women who, you know, would grab, you know, this, that, and the other thing off the ground and throw it all together in a tea and have you drink a tea and you were all set. So, I mean, it's been around for a really, really long time. Archaeologists even have evidence that indicates the use of medicinal plants back to the Paleolithic age, which would be about 60,000 years ago, with evidence of herbal remedies dating back over 5,000 years to the Sumerians, they compiled a list of plants and what they were using them for. A number of ancient cultures wrote about plants and their medicinal uses in books called herbals. You can actually create your own herbal. I suggest it. Most people who have, if you are a practicing pagan witch and you have a book of shadows, I've always had my herbal book separate. It is a wart cutting book. That's the way I call it. It has been separate, so I know exactly where everything is when it comes to herbs and what I need them for. In ancient Egypt, the herbs are mentioned in the papyri. I don't know how to pronounce this word correctly. It's Papyri. Basically, it was depicted in tombs and illustrations, and on rare occasions you would find in medical jars containing trace amounts of herbs. Among the oldest and lengthiest and most medical part of this of ancient Egypt was the Ebers Papyrus, which dates back to about 1550 BC and covers more than 700 drugs, and they are mainly from plant origin. The earliest known Greek herbals come from Theophrastus, of Eros, who in the 4th century BC wrote in Greek Historia Plantarum. So he wrote during the 3rd century in BC, and in the 1st century BC, only a few fragments of these works have survived intact, but what remains, scholars have noted a lot of overlap with the Egyptian. It's just like you can be one form of pagan, or you could be another form of pagan, but yet your paths will cross at some point. There are a lot of similarities between each path that everybody walks, and that includes Christianity as well. So all the paths, lead to basically the same place. So they're all going to cross at some place. It just depends on where you're from, what you're doing, where your history comes from, on whether or not, you're on the right path. Anyhow, I'll get into that later, though. That's a whole nother story. Seeds that are likely used for herbalism have been found in archaeological sites over the Bronze Age in China, dating back to the Shang Dynasty, which was around 1600 BC. Yeah, 1600 BC. So over 100 of the 224 drugs mentioned in the Haranda, an early Chinese medical text, are herbs. So herbs are also commonly featured in medicine of ancient India, where the principal treatment for disease was diet. There is a form of natural healing called Ayurveda, and this is a big form, and that it's still widely practiced in Asia, and it's actually starting to come to the West Coast here. So these have been going on for a long time. Your diet has a lot to do. We eat a lot of processed foods in America, so we don't have the good health that they have in other countries where they're not eating that processed food. The World Health Organization estimates that 80% of the population of some Asian and African countries presently use herbal medicines for some aspect of primary health care. So their primary health care actually has herbs recommended with it. Pharmaceuticals are prohibitively expensive for most of the world's population. So the ones who can't afford drugs that they want to give you, our wonderful country and our wonderful drugs, herbal medicines can be grown from a seed or gathered up from nature at little or no cost. So it's much more cost effective for people in like third world countries who are living on less than $2 a day. So yeah, it's much easier for them to use those. Many of the pharmaceuticals currently available to physicians have a long history of use with herbal remedies as well, including opium, aspirin, digitalis, and quinine. According to the World Health Organization, approximately 25% of modern drugs used in the United States have been derived from plants. So the processed drugs that we take gets its derivatives from plants. So, been around for a long time. Let me see. In 2010, they did a global survey, and the most common, which was 1,000 plant derivative compounds, only 156 clinical trials were published. Preclinical studies with the cell culture and animal studies were reported to about 1/2 of the plant products, while 12% of the plants available through the Western market had no substantial studies whatsoever. So you kind of have to be careful with it too. You have to know what you're doing. You don't want to start, I'm going to be an herbalist, or I'm going to get into herbalism, and I'm going to take care of myself all natural. And you have to be very careful, because there are some herbs that if you mix with prescription drugs, because never would I ever tell you to stop taking your prescriptions. And I'm not a doctor. I'm not even close to being a doctor, and I don't pretend to be, and I don't want anybody going out and just saying, oh, well, I can take this tea and it'll cure it. No. No. It's like chiropractic care. It doesn't cure everything. It basically helps your body learn to cure itself. But it's over a period of time. But you also have to take, like, medication for high blood pressure and stuff like that. You want to make sure that you're taking that medication. You don't want to use herbs that are going to do any harm to it. Let me see. I wanted to talk about the herbal remedies that are very common in Europe and in Germany. Herbal medications are dispensed at apothecaries. Prescription drugs are sold alongside essential oil and herbal extracts, or even herbal teas. Herbal remedies are seen by some as a treatment to be preferred to pure medical compounds that have been industrially processed. In India, the herbal remedy is so popular that the government of India has created a separate department. It is the AYUSH, and it is under the Ministry of the Health and Family Welfare. The National Medicinal Plant Boards was also established in 2000 by the Indian government in order to deal with the herbal medical system. So they actually have an herbal medical system in place in India. There are many different types of forms of which you can use these herbs. Most common in which is, the form of a liquid that you drink in either like an herbal tea or a plant extract. There are several methods of standardization, and it has to be determined by the herbs that you're using. One is a ratio of raw materials to a solvent. However, different specimens of even the same plant species may vary in chemical content. So for this reason, you need to know what you're working with. You always want to make sure that you don't ingest anything or put anything on your skin, because you can get really sick from getting some of this stuff on your skin as well. You want to make sure you know what you're doing. It's a lot of study. And there is no school for a degree in the United States. They tell you get a certificate. It's not a degree. It's a waste of money. You can do the same thing and on your own by studying. It's just, it doesn't make any sense to spend that kind of money. Herbal teas are the result of liquid extracts of herbs into water, and they can be made in different ways. Infusions, you'll hear about infusions. These are hot water extracts of herbs, such as chamomile or mint. It's through steeping, like you do with a tea, in the regular tea bag. You just let it steep, and you'll put your herbs in, you pour the boiling water over the top, you let it steep, and then you drain it. Decoctions are long-term boiled extracts, and they're usually used for harder surfaces like your roots and your barks, stuff like that. You would put them on the stove and boil them for a certain amount of time depending on what you're working with. Maceration is an old infusion of plants with a high mucilage content, such as sage or thyme, etc. And to make these macerates, your plants are chopped and added to cold water. Then they are left to stand for 7 to 12 hours, depending on how much of an herb you're using. And for most of them, about 10 hours is what the time is usually set. Tinctures, if you've heard anyone say, I'm going to take a tincture. These are alcoholic extracts of herbs. They're generally stronger than herbal teas, obviously, and are usually obtained by combining a mixture of 100% pure ethanol with water. My best bet so far, as I've seen people work with the tinctures, is to use vodka, a strong vodka. These seem to work with the herbs and stuff really well. Herbal wine and elixirs. These are also an alcoholic extract of herbs, usually with an ethanol content that's much lower. But it includes liquid extracts, dry extracts. It's just a tincture isn't quite, an elixir isn't quite as strong as a tincture. That's what I wanted to say. The exact composition of an herbal product is influenced by the method of extraction. A tea will be rich in polar components because of the water, and that's a polar solvent. Oil, on the other hand, is a non-polar solvent, so oil, it doesn't get as absorbed into the non-polar ones, and alcohol lies somewhere in between. So, I wanted to talk about, there is, many people use it on their skin. You can use herbal extracts on your skin for lotions and creams, and they have pain fighting and stuff like that. These are applied topically to the skin. They can be used in essential oils. The extracts can be applied to the skin. Normally you're going to dilute them with a carrier oil, such as coconut oil or olive oil or palm oil or something like that. You want to dilute them because these oils can burn your skin. These are a more intense form of oil. You're getting a lot more potency with it. So yeah, you don't want to, it's too high of a dose to put on you straight. Almond oil is another one. There are salves, there are oils, there are balms, there are creams, there are lotions. There's all different kinds of, topical ways to use herbs. Taking a food grade oil and soaking herbs in it for anywhere from a week to a month allows that herb to be extracted into the oil as well. These can be used for cooking, and these can be used for making massage oils or topical application or antibacterial stuff or salves, wound healing, everything. I mean, you can use all different kinds of stuff with that, but you have to make sure this is an herb that you can eat as well. You don't want to try to put something together with something that's going to make you very, very sick. A number of herbs are thought to likely to cause adverse effects, just like you have medications with side effects. There are a lot of different herbs that will create the same thing of side effects, and plant and drug interactions have led to adverse reactions that are sometimes life-threatening or lethal. You want to make sure that before you even start taking an over-the-counter vitamin D, you want to check with your doctor first. You always want to talk to your doctor, and if you don't have a doctor that understands that some people, would like to do things a little more naturally than what we do these days, I would suggest finding a different doctor, although sometimes that can't be done. But herbal remedies can be dangerous, and you have to be very careful. So you have to have a doctor, or even a pharmacist that's willing to work with you, or if you have an herbalist that you trust in your area, you want to talk to them and find out exactly what you're doing. Because you can really do some damage to yourself. I'm trying to skip through here and figure out what I wanted to talk to you guys about tonight. There are highly toxic herbs out there, such as poison hemlock and nightshade, aka belladonna. They are not marketed to the public as herbs because the risks are well known. So, not an easy thing to get. On occasion, you know, you can find it and it's been out, you know, linked to, you know, consumption. But you have to you really have to be very, very careful on what you're getting, and you really have to trust who you're getting it from, and especially when it comes to essential oils. The oils that you see, and I'm going to do a show completely on essential oils, because the oils that you see at Walmart for a couple of bucks are not essential oils. These aren't even close to being essential oils. You want to make sure that whatever essential oil you're working with is a true oil and you can trust it. If you have 3 different oils in front of you, and 3 different kinds, we'll say orange, frankincense, and peppermint. If all 3 of those oils are the same color, 10 chances to 1 they are not essential oils. And essential oils don't really feel like oil either. They are more of a, almost like a rubbing alcohol type of feel, and you can learn to smell them and see which ones are different, and I'll teach you a way to test actual oils too. But like black cohosh, this has been linked to people having liver failure. The safety of herbs for pregnant women, there really isn't any studies, so it's better to just, if you're pregnant, don't use anything because you don't know. There are some herbs that will actually cause miscarriage, so you want to make sure you stay away from herbs and stuff. Trying to think here. Chinese herb mixtures, here you go. Like comfrey herbs containing certain flavonoids or germander or gum. Licorice root and pennyroyal, for example, are a higher degree of confidence of risk for long-term effects. Like ginseng, which is unpopular among herbalists for this reason. You don't want to be taking ginseng for a long period of time. It's good to take for a short period of time. You do not want to take it for a long period of time. The endangered herb golden seal, or milk thistle, or senna, these are generally advised to not use as well. Aloe vera juice, buckthorn bark, cascara, saw palmetto, valerian, kava. Those have been banned in the European Union, along with St. John's wort and betel nut. So yeah, certain you have to be very, 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 very careful when you're working with any kind of herbs. There are also concerns with respect of the numerous well-established interactions of herbs with your drugs. Usage of herbal remedies should be clarified, as some herbal remedies have a potential to cause adverse drug reactions when used in combination with various prescriptions or even over-the-counter medication. You really need to be informed if you are going to start an herbal, and I've found this even with medications. I always go to my pharmacist because he seems to have more knowledge than my doctor does lately. But if you're going to start, let's say you want to take some sleepy time tea, some chamomile tea to help you sleep at night, and you're on certain medication, talk to your pharmacist. Your pharmacist can tell you, okay, you know, chamomile tea with this specific drug, can't do it. It will, you know, have this adverse effect. Pharmacists can pick up on that a lot quicker than doctors can because their computers are set up that way. So, somebody who has dangerously low blood pressure, I have low blood pressure. You can get low blood pressure with a prescription medicine that has the same effect, or you could get it with the herb. So if you're on the prescription medicine and it's giving you that effect, you don't want to take that herb to go with it, because that will really put you into a whole another world. Okay, and another thing, because all of our stores have them. Dollar Tree, Dollar General, Family Dollar, Walmart. They all have St. John's wort, vitamin D, herbal supplements. A 2013 study found that 1/3 of your herbal supplements sampled contained no trace of the herb that was listed on the label. So you bought St. John's wort and they tested it, and there isn't even St. John's wort in the whole entire product. Some of them are altered with contaminants and fillers that are not even listed on the label, and can actually have allergens such as soy, wheat, or black walnut. So you want to make sure that what you're getting, because like one bottle labeled as St. John's wort was found to actually contain Alexandria Sina, which is a laxative. So here you are taking St. John's wort and can't figure out why you're going to the bathroom all the time. And someone who would be allergic to that would be even in worse shape. So you have to be very, very careful, because even though it says that's what's in it, not always. 20% of herbal remedies surveyed were not registered with Therapeutic Goods Administration, despite this being a condition for sale. They found an earlier 60% of products surveyed had ingredients that didn't even match what was on the labels. Out of 121 products, only 15 had the ingredients that matched their actual packaging. So you want to be very, 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 very careful when you're doing stuff like this. In 2015, the New York Attorney General issued a cease and desist letter to 4 major U.S. retailers, which was GNC, Target, Walgreens, and Walmart, who were accused of selling herbal supplements that were mislabeled and potentially dangerous. 24 products were tested by DNA barcoding as part of the investigation, and all but 5 containing DNA that did not match their product labels. So yeah, you even if you're buying them in the store, I mean, you are so much better to get fresh herbs or grow them yourself, so you know that they don't have chemicals on them. If you're going to use herbs and stuff like that, it's much easier, or you buy them from someone who you knows what they're doing. Herbalists have to learn many skills. You don't just learn, okay, this herb and that herb can go together and it helps with this problem. There's a lot. Wild crafting, cultivation of herbs, diagnosis and treatment of conditions, dispensing of herbal medication or preparations of medications such as salves or creams. And the education of an herbalist varies considerably in different areas of the world. Lay herbalists and traditional indigenous medicine people generally rely upon apprenticeship and recognition from their communities in lieu of formal schooling. A lot of times, you have the witch doctor in the tribe, and there is a junior witch doctor, and it just continues on. It's just like a medicine man that was in your American Indians would have an apprentice that after this medicine man passed, the next one would take over. So it wasn't really a form of schooling as much as it was an apprenticeship. In some countries, formalized training and minimal education standards do exist, although these are not necessarily uniform within or between countries. An example is Australia. The current self-regulated status of the profession results in different associations setting different educational standards and subsequently recognizing an educational institution or course of training. The National Herbalist Association of Australia is generally recognized as having the most rigorous professional standard within Australia. United Kingdom has a training for medical herbalists, and it's done and funded through the universities. For example, a Bachelor of Science degree in herbal medicine are offered in universities over in the United Kingdom. And then you have government regulations, which we don't really have any here, but the World Health Organization. This was a specialized agency created through the United Nations that is basically concerned with international public health. That's what they do. They publish quality control methods for medicinal plants, and such. And they're the ones who do the testing and decide whether or not it should be used or should not be used. In Europe, the herbal medications are regulated under a Committee on Herbal Medicinal Products. In the United States, herbal remedies are regulated dietary supplements by the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration. Under current good manufacturing practice, the policy for dietary supplements means that manufacturers of products falling into this category are not required to prove the safety or efficiency of their product so long as they don't make a medical claim or imply using it other than a dietary supplement. Although the FDA can pull it from the shelf if it finds it's harmful. But they can't say, okay, you're going to take ginkgo and it's going to help with amnesia, because amnesia is a medical condition. You can't say that. Ginkgo helps with memory. They can say it. It's a dietary supplement. It's not a cure. In Canada, the regulations are described in the Natural and Non-Prescription Health Products Directorate, which requires an 8-digit natural product number or homeopathic medicine number on the label of licensed herbal medicines or dietary supplements. They are more controlled anywhere other than here. The United States does not put much control. There are some herbs such as cannabis or coca. A lot of medicinal marijuana has been okayed in a lot of different states. Maine just okayed it this past voting season. They are kind of outright banned though in a lot of countries. Like coca is legal in most of South American countries where it's grown. And the cannabis plant is used as an herbal medicine, and as such, it is legal in certain parts of the world. But you have to be very careful with that as well. So, I mean, you don't want to just, buy something off the street if you're going to use it for medicinal purposes. You just really shouldn't. Medicinal cannabis or marijuana is completely different than the stuff you buy off the street. So yeah, and you don't know what you're getting off the street. It could be laced with anything. Scientific criticism. How do I explain this? Herbalism has been criticized as a potential minefield of unreliability of product quality, safety, various herbal products to authenticate their contents, efficiency, and there's generally an absence of high-quality scientific research on product composition or effectiveness for anti-disease activity. So yeah, the scientific community is like, herbalism is just, a fluke, and it ain't gonna help you. But you have to remember that before we had all this science, that's how we cured what was wrong with us, was through our herbs and our plants. Also, unethical practices by some herbalists and manufacturers which may include false advertising about a health benefit, God, I can't speak today, on product labels or literature, and contamination or use of fillers during product preparation. That's another thing you have to be careful of too. It's like saying it's an essential oil when it's not an essential oil because they've got too many additives in it. Phytotherapy. This is another form of herbalism, but this is a typical use for this would be like the bark of the chinchilla tree contains quinine, which today is widely prescribed treatment for malaria, and especially in countries that can't afford to purchase the more expensive drugs. The phototherapy is intended medical use of plants and plant extracts for therapeutic purposes. Differentiation with herbalism is that phototherapy may require constituents of the plant extracts to be standardized or adhering to a minimum content of one or several active components in that product. So in other words, you have a recipe. And your recipe calls for certain amounts of certain things. Herbalism is kind of, okay, well, a pinch of this and a little bit of that, and it's not all, you know, oh my god, a half a teaspoon of this and 3/4 of a teaspoon of that. It's not as rigorous as phototherapy is. They are much more follow the directions, don't make any, you know, don't wander off, don't substitute. Like, okay, well, this one calls for butter, but I have margarine. You can't substitute when it comes to phototherapy. Modern pyotherapy, sorry, not phototherapy, pyotherapy, may use conventional methods to assess herbal drug quantity, but more typically relies on modern processes like high performance liquid, chromatography, gas chromatography, ultraviolet or visible spectrometry, or atomic absorption. You basically need a science degree to do this kind of stuff. It is distinct from homeopathic medicine, and it avoids mixing any kind of plant and synthetic or bioactive substances together. It's regarded by some as traditional medicine, but it depends on where you're from. So, traditional systems, which would be your traditional medicines. Ready to drink macerated medicinal liquor with gojo berries and ginseng is for sale at a traditional medicinal market in Xi'an, China. Africa has, you know, 80% of their population in Africa uses traditional medicines as primary health care. Native Americans, medicinally used about 2,500 of the approximately 20,000 plant species that are native to this continent. China, some researchers were trained in both Western and traditional Chinese medicine, and have to disconnect ancient medical texts in the light of modern science. One idea is that the yin-yang balance, at least with regards to herbs, corresponds to the pro-oxidant and antioxidant balance. This interpretation is supported by several investigations and ratings of some of the yin-yang herbs that they use. India is where Ayurvedic medicine comes from, and these are complex formulas with 30 or more ingredients, including a sizable number of ingredients that have undergone an alchemical processing, and they're used to balance. In India, they have Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, and these are the three things that you need to balance. It's like chakras or the yin and the yang. It depends on where you're at on what you're trying to balance. In Tibet, the Tibetan medical system is prevalent and is also called the Amici medical system, and has over 337 species of medicinal plants which have been documented. So, I mean, they use a lot of that over there too. In Tamil Nadu, they have their own medical system, now popularly called Sindha medicine, and the system is entirely in the Tamil language, and it contains roughly 3,000 verses covering diverse aspects of medicine. This work includes herbal, mineral, and metallic compositions used as medicine. Ayurveda is in Sanskrit, but Sanskrit was not generally used as mother tongue, and hence its medicines are mostly taken from Sindha and other, local traditions. In Indonesia, herbal medicines are held in bottles, especially among the Javis and the Jamu. Traditional herbal medicine is an age-old tradition preserved for centuries. Jamu is thought to have originated in the Maritime Kingdom era, about 1,300 years ago. This is the people who grind herbs with bite stones, like using your mortar and pestle, and drinks, massages for their clients. They do a whole realm of different, and that's dated back from 1700 years ago. So, let me see. Though highly influenced, possibly influenced by India, Ayurveda, the system in Indonesia is a vast archipelago with numerous Indonesian plants not to be found in India, which includes plants similar to Australia's beyond the Wallace Line. Indonesians may experiment and find out that medicinal uses of these native plants may work the same, and they may vary from region to region and are not often enough not written down, especially in remote areas of the country, which is why we don't have a lot of what they used. I mean, the Egyptians were embalming and making mummies way before we knew what to do for embalming. They were using the herbs and stuff to embalm you, and put you away in the pyramid and keep you good, and they knew all about that stuff way before we did. So I mean, it's been around for such a long time, it's just not even funny. Although primarily herbs and minerals are acquired from animals such as honey, royal jelly, milk, eggs, these are often used in the Ayurveda system. The Chinese and Western medical models are like two frames of reference in which identical phenomenon are studied, neither frame of reference providing an unobstructive view of health and illness. Each is incomplete and need of refinement. Specifically, the traditional Chinese medicine model could affect change on the recognized and exposed phenomenon of detachment to patients unique to the clinical relationship between patients and physicians of the Western School of Medicine. All right, there are 4 approaches to the use of plants as medicine. These include magical or shamanic. Almost all societies, with the exception of cultures influenced by Western-style industrialization, recognize this kind of use. The practitioner is regarded as endowed with gifts or powers that allow him or her to use herbs in a way that is hidden from the average person, and the herbs are said to affect the spirit or soul of the person. The energetic, this approach includes the major systems of traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurveda. Herbs are regarded as having actions in terms of their energies and affecting the energies of the body. The practitioner may have extensive training. Ayurveda, if you find somebody who does Ayurveda and actually knows what they're doing, they've gone through a lot of training. And they are ideally sensitive to energy. They don't necessarily have supernatural powers, they're just very sensitive. You have the functional dynamic. This approach was used by early medical practitioners, God, I can't speak today, whose doctrine forms the basis of contemporary practices in the UK. Herbs have a functional action, which is not necessarily linked to any kind of physical compound, although often to a psychological function. But there's no explicit recourse to concepts involving energy. And then there is the chemical. And the chemical is the modern pytherapists' attempt to explain herbal actions in terms of their chemical constitutes. It is generally assumed that specific combinations of secondary metabolites in the plant are responsible for activity claimed or demonstrated, a concept called synergy. So there are 4 basic approaches to how people use plants. Herbalists tend to use extracts from plants, such as roots or leaves, but it's not isolated. There's much more opening for that. Pharmaceutical medicines prefer single ingredients on the grounds that dosages can be more easily, figured out. It's also possible to patent single compounds and therefore generate income. Herbalists often reject that notion of a single active ingredient. Very rarely will you have an herbalist that'll say, oh, yep, just take this one herb. It's going to be a combination. Herbalists deny that herbal synergism can be duplicated with synthetic chemicals. In other words, the function that we get, the healing that we get from the actual plant for aspirin is different than the synthetic aspirin itself. Herbalists and phytochemicals, phytomedicals people, they tend to argue with each other because one thinks, you know, that you should only have one herb and the other one thinks you should have more, but, you know, it depends on who you are. Specific cases that claim, for the claims of synergy and malfunctionality have been supported by science. The open question of how widely both can be generalized. Herbalists would argue the case of synergy as being widely generalized on the basis of an interpretation of evolutionary history, not necessarily shared by the pharmaceutical community. Plants are subject to similar selection pressures as humans, and therefore they may develop resistance to threats such as radiation. So you can have plants growing out in a radioactive area that would be the same as growing somewhere else that would not normally be able to grow in a radioactive area, but they have evolved. And as they evolve, they learn to adapt. In selecting herbal treatments, an herbalist may use forms of information that are not applicable to pharmacists, because herbs can moonlight as vegetables too. Teas or spices that have a huge consumer base in large scale, and in a large scale study, become more feasible. Herbalists contend that historical medicinal records and herbals are underutilized for resources and information. I agree. I think we could learn a lot by going back in time and reading a lot more. Indigenous healers often claim to have learned by observing that sick animals change their food preference, or they'll nibble on a bitter herb that they would normally reject. I don't know if you've ever seen a cat or a dog eating grass. Normally they eat grass because their stomach's upset, and the grass will make them throw up, which in turn makes it so their stomach's not upset. Animals know automatically by the smell of an herb, or the way it looks, or the way it tastes, or the way it feels, that this is what they need for their system. Field biologists have provided corroborating evidence based on observations of diverse species such as chickens, sheep, butterflies, and chimpanzees. They have physical means of purging intestinal parasites. They'll change their diet. There is a relative of the ginger plant that is a potent antimicrobial, and apparently will keep certain infections at bay. Current research focus of the possibility of this plant also protects gorillas from fibrosing, which has a devastating effect on captive animals. So even in the animal world, they have been doing this for years. They've been finding certain plants that they need to help them with whatever they need. Magical herbalism. I'll get into a little bit of that. Witchcraft and herbalism go hand in hand, and have done so for centuries in the past. Witches were called wise women or wise men, and were often the only people in their neighborhood that neighbors could go to for healing. Doctors were sparse, and not very normally would you find a doctor, you know, everywhere you went. So these wise men and women who watched the stars and gave thanks to the divine and harvested and respected the herbs of the field were the healers of mankind, until their persecution led them to go underground and hide their craft and wisdom. Today, many witches are returning to their roots, so to speak, and looking to find a connection between the earth and by healing themselves and those around them with herbs and plants. I totally believe I am on medication. Don't get me wrong. I have to take medication for certain issues that I have. But I do believe in turmeric for pain. You can have a turmeric tea for pain. It does help with swelling and inflammation and pain. I learned this when I had no money and no insurance to get medications that I needed. I learned different things that would help. Turmeric does not taste great, and you don't really need all that much, thank the gods. But I found that that really works for me, and other people have found different things that have worked for them. I've always found a connection with herbs and healing, and just in general, even foods. Even some foods can be used for healing. So it's just it's just instilled in you most of the time. So plant magic is an age-old tradition. It dates back to ancient Egyptian times. It's been used for many purposes, such as healing, self-empowerment, love spells, and even protection. Each plant has its own magical properties and strengths that can be used to aid and power for different kinds of spells. Plant magic has its own desired results, and it's regardless of the strength of the caster, due to the fact that plants themselves have a higher level of magical properties contained within them. So, with multiple uses, the speed and effectiveness of its power, plant magic is one of the most popular arts used today. You're doing a spell, and you need it to work faster. You want to add cinnamon, which will make it stronger and work quicker. Witches are not the only ones, by the way, who have been using plants for healing. Nowadays, it's a common practice that most alternative medicines do use a variety of herbs and plants for healing, mostly for dietary, health food supplements and stuff like that. But certain herbs and plants, like eucalyptus is used for a sore throat, coffee beans for a headache, that sort of thing, is recognized. A lot of your health food stores recognize that. Another way to enhance any spell is to sprinkle specific herbs on the flame of a candle during your ritual. This adds extra power to your spell. Other magic that can be done with herbs is to leave small amounts of herbs around your home. This can remove negative energies and offer protection, bring happiness, promote good health, and bring peaceful energy, such as your witch balls. You can make those for protection or whatever and hang them in your windows. Same as your poppets, your voodoo dolls, whatever you want to call them. They are normally made with herbs for specific purposes as well, and they're used for healing as well. Let's see. It was a common practice to carry a charm bag with a variety of herbs to bring about many things, such as protection or attraction to love. The best time to perform plant magic or to collect herbs is always at night. You want to collect your herbs at night, especially under a full moon. It is said that the plants and the herbs are most powerful at this time, so if this is what you're going to be using your herbalism with, there are other things that go along with it, along with planting and everything else. Excuse me. Over the years, witches began to use codes in their workings. Eye of Newt and Tongue of Dog are codes for very simple, attainable flowers and plants. Witches would have a great laugh about unsuspecting fools who'd stumble upon their recipes and went out searching for the ingredients, battling for lion hearts and bull's horns and mother's milk and Englishman's foot, and, using Macbeth as a prime example. It starts off with fillet of a fenny snake in the cauldron, boil and bake, eye of newt, toe of frog, wool of bat, and tongue of dog, adder's fork and blind worm's sting, lizard leg and howlet's wing, for a charm of powerful trouble, like a hell broth boil and bubble. He's not writing about the animals. He's actually referring to simple plants and herbs that are out there. There is an actual list, and I will see if I can find it, and I'm post it up in the group. All herbs have particular vibrations and are mixed in some sort of way when they're used to bring the body into balance. when using herbal magic, it's unlimited, or only limited by your imagination. Let me rephrase that. It's also important to you that when you're using herbs, to use your intuition, to be guided for what's right for you. Much like crystals will choose their owners, certain herbs will, basically when you're an herbalist, certain herbs, you'll be guided to certain ones. If you're ingesting herbs, such as an herbal tea, you want to make sure you know that that herb you are ingesting is actually edible. You want to be very careful with that. Even in the magical world. Creating a magical or spiritual garden for yourself and practicing the witch's traditional magic using the plants and herbs from your garden, you can become closer to the earth, to Mother Nature, to certain gods and goddesses. I always followed the god Pan. Not really, I don't worship any gods or goddesses, I don't do that, but I have gods and goddesses that I work with for doing certain things, and Pan was always one of my go-to. And back in the day, Diana was my go-to goddess. It's just like you'll have go-to herbs. I have rosemary, that's my go-to herb. I have basil, that's my go-to herb. There are certain things that you become immune to. You become associated with. So, you want to write down, when you're learning, you want to understand how each plant and herb works, whether it's viewing it for medicinal purposes or magical purposes. This is why you would keep a book of shadows, for creating recipes, so to speak, whether it's for a spell or for a lotion or a poppet or a soap or whatever the case may be. You want to make sure you write that stuff down so that, you know, because as much as we would all love to say that, oh no, I don't need to write that down, I can remember it. No, we all forget. So yeah, you're better off writing that down. You see all the stuff I have written down. Main methods of using plants and herbs are for protection. A lot of people use them for protection. You're carrying a small amount of the plant or herb in a small container that can be carried in a handbag or a pocket. You can also wear it in your bra to have it close to your skin. I do that with stones, certain stones, if you're using stones, or crystals. Like a sprig when placed under your pillow or bed can offer protection during the night's sleep to induce a restful night's sleep. Plants and herb magic has been used for decades. It's again enjoying, or it is again enjoying a resurgence if people want to learn more about natural therapies. It has come back a lot. You hear a lot about natural medicines being very popular, and you also hear about a lot of the medical doctors, well, the natural doctors, naturopaths, being killed lately. So you kind of have to be careful with that too. But yeah, natural medicine, everybody is trying to get back to a more natural, because we've realized what we've done with our processed foods, and we have created a country of obese people who are not in the healthiest condition. Most people are on some kind of medication for something, where we didn't have that way back when. So a lot of people are getting more into that. You want to always use their magic with a positive intent. That's depending on who you are and what magic you're performing, but for the most part, you want to keep it positive, especially when you're using herbs, because you're putting in energy to the herbs. It's kind of like doing Reiki healing. If you're doing Reiki healing, you're trying to make something positive. You really don't want to put something negative down with Reiki healing. So I am going to see if I can find that list of different names for, you know, oddball names for herbs, and I will try to get that list up, and that way you'll see what I mean when, you know, you're looking for frog's foot or goat's foot and the actual herb that it actually coincides with it. It's actually kind of cool. It really is kind of cool. I always thought it was neat. But it's like snapdragons are little skulls. When they dry up, they turn into little skulls, which are really, really cool. But yeah, I mean, and I'm going to try to get some of the plants and their magical properties as well put up in the group as well. So, but it has been 1 whole hour, and that is my first show. I will be back next Monday at 7 p.m. Feel free to come up with any kind of ideas for shows that you would like to hear. You can post them up on Facebook at Facebook groups, Herbalism and More, with Ravenwings.com in Facebook. There is a link that I have attached in the live chat, but I will also attach it to the video when I archive it. So if you want to join in the group there, you can. And I want to thank everyone for coming and watching, and I hope everyone has a wonderful night and a great Thanksgiving. Take care.